here's one of my old techniques that I was messing around with last night, and it has to do with looking at something with a lot of randomness in it. So, it could be like tree bark, or in my case last night, a smooth concrete floor, or like a popcorn ceiling or something like that. But you kind of want to stare at it and zone out on it until you see a face or a pattern or something pop out in the randomness. Then once that happens, you want to hold on to that perspective for as long as you can and essentially do like a little mini meditation thing with it. And I find that same type of perspective and attention that you're applying in this state when you're kind of zoned out looking at this randomness in an image feels extremely similar to me as, when I see a dream breaking down and I'm in REM and I want to rebuild it back together. It feels very similar to that. And it is also the same type of perspective I use when I'm getting to the hypnagogic state. You're seeing these hypnagogic images pop up, but you want to watch it, kind of loosely and not be too zeroed in on it, or, it wakes you up too much and blacks everything out. So I find it to work really, really well for that. So like for me last night, I was warming up and trying to stretch out in the beginning. So I was kind of in a nice kind of like, zone state already. But as I was sitting down stretching, getting deeper into my stretch and staring at the floor, I would see, a face or some design pop out. Then you hold on to it. Then if you can hold on to it for, I would say like at least a minute, several minutes, hopefully, you can watch this thing that you see initially morph and change into different objects, essentially. And yeah, and that's basically the practice. One other good thing that can help too is sometimes people can have a hard time kind of finding that kind of pulled back soft perspective. So one way that I find to be very similar to it is if you're using like one of those old third eye books or magic eye books where you look at this randomness and then it has some like computer generated image pop out. So it's a similar perspective and viewpoint to that. But another thing that can help, especially if you're having a hard time kind of finding this zone to kind of be looking with, is if you do something that's a little bit hard, right? So like planks, I was doing planks last night and it was working great for this too, where if you do a plank long enough to where it starts to get difficult, so, man, at least a minute, hopefully more than a minute or whatever, but it is good because it gives you a set time, like maybe you do 5 minutes or however long you're gonna do your plank, but at some point it's gonna get really hard. And when it starts to get hard and you kind of get your mind off of, say you're thinking too much, trying to stare at the ground, waiting for some image to pop up. Once your perspective can kind of be softened and pulled back because it's getting difficult, you're fighting it, you're trying to keep your plank as long as you can. Very often, at some point within that time, if you go a minute plus several minutes, at some point you should get zoned out enough to where you can start to be seeing some, some kind of image pop out of that randomness, and then that can be your opportunity to hold on to it. Say, a minute or so into your plank, you finally see it, it's getting hard. Well, whatever, just hold that position and that perspective as long as you can. If your plank breaks, whatever, no problem, take a rest. But I think once you start to find that perspective, it's pretty easy for me to find it on my own without having to, stress myself out doing like a 5-minute long plank or something like that. But anyway, hope that helps. And yeah, until the next video, keep the meditation practices and the hypnagogic practices and the lucid dreaming practices legit.